Alrighty, so Legends of the Force spoilers are in full swing, so I'm going to start my card review for set 5, and I'm going to be doing it a little differently than I've done it in the past, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But before we get going, please hit that subscribe button, and if you're interested in some more content from me, check out my Patreon as well. Alright, so I mentioned it's going to be reviewing a little differently, and I think the most important thing is this time I'm not going to be reviewing every card. I think there's too many cards that are most likely not going to see competitive play. I may miss one here and there that ends up overperforming, but I have to do my best to kind of figure out what I think is even worth talking about, and I think these review sessions have gone a little longer than I'd like them to in the past because I've spent a lot of time on cards that frankly aren't very good, and I'm going to try to focus a little more on the ones that are, and I'm also going to try to focus a little more on synergy. I'm going to be using my own heuristics. Something I'll explain now is basically to kind of shortcut the best of my ability. There's going to be cards that either are similar to other cards that we've seen, so we can kind of shortcut. We know a certain kind of card is good, so we kind of know this new card will be good, and it saves us a lot of time in trying to identify what may see play. And in other ways, there's like really flashy bomb style cards that maybe they're not similar to cards we've seen in the past, but are just like so blatantly good that we also don't have to spend that much time on. And I'll show you a couple examples of those in a moment. I'm also going to start off this review, because it's the first one for the new set, talking a bit about the new mechanics. So far we've seen Force and Hidden. Those are kind of the new mechanics, and Force, we'll talk about that. It's not just like the Force trait. There is a new Force token and a mechanic around that. After that, we'll go into the leader review, and I think this is the stuff I'll spend the most time on, especially on leaders that are interesting, because these are the things that enable new archetypes the best. And I'll also have some call-out cards that are being released as sort of leader-specific synergy, potentially. So we'll cover those. And then, yeah, we'll get into like the bulk of the card review, and you'll see that's, of course, if you want the full spoilers, do check out card lists online. I'm talking about a lot of them, just not all of them. All right, so let's talk first about the Force mechanic. This is by far the most weird mechanic they've introduced, especially for this set. So the Force is a token that you can have. You can get it one time. You can't stack Force tokens. Once you have the Force, you just have that token, and then if a card makes you use that token, you would lose it, and then you can try to get it again. And in addition to this mechanic, there are 4 new common bases. These replace the common base slot that you would have otherwise had like the 30 health versions of. So they are now 28 health versions in each color. You can see the blue one, Shadowed Undercity, and the green one here, Jedi Temple. They are 20 health life bases that say when a friendly Force unit attacks, the Force is with you. So you create your Force token. So this is the simplest way to get the Force token. You need a Force unit to attack, and then you will get that token. There are other cards that give it as well. We've seen a few. And I'm expecting more ways to get it, potentially a cycle of rare bases that also in some way create that Force token for you. But so far, the common bases, you get a penalty of 2 life, but you get a way to enable this with Force units. And Hidden is the other new mechanic, and Hidden is a bolded mechanic. It says this unit can't be attacked if it was played this phase, so it gives it protection for the turn you play it. So you can see a few of the examples here, especially on the bottom here, Tukata and Attuned Fernok. That's a 3-cost 4/2 and a 2-cost 4/1. So these are high power units with low health, but they're hidden. So the turn you play them, they can't be attacked. So if you're able to play them and then still maintain initiative going into the next turn, you'll get an action to use them. You'll be able to attack. For instance, you go first, you play that Attuned Fernok, you get a 4/1 turn 1 play that they can't kill, and you claim, and then you can bash for 4. That's a big start to a game, being able to do 4 damage. And Tukata, same thing. It's a 4/2. You get 1 extra life, but 1 extra cost. So Hidden, there's going to be a leader that focuses around this mechanic, so we'll spend much more time talking about that there. But it is quite powerful. A way to avoid interaction lists temporarily. And you can see Anakin Skywalker here, a very interesting hidden card because it's a 1-cost 1/1, and not only does it have hidden, it also has shielded, which means it's going to be very sticky. And it has the Force trait. It's a 1-drop with the Force trait, so it's going to be able to, you know, with those common bases, very easily attack the next turn. Get you that Force token. It's going to enable Force throw and other Force synergy cards very easily. Like at any point in the game, you can play a 1-cost card that they can't immediately attack, and then play your Force payoffs the same turn. Something that other cards haven't really been able to do because most Force units are either expensive, or if they are cheap, they're kind of bad and their stats are really bad and they're really easy to remove. And Anakin is actually just like really difficult to get off the board. So, and I think he'll actually work really well with the Anakin leader as well because he's a shielded unit. So he can, you know, actually attack as a 3-power unit which is like able to clear a lot of turn 1 plays, and then maybe even give you that Force token if you are playing with those Force bases. All right, here are some other Force interactive cards, and Drain Essence here is a villain blue card that deals 2, and then the Force is with you. You create your token. So 2-cost deal 2 is not great, but 2-cost deal 2 get the Force token. So here we have a way to generate that token without having to attack with a Force unit. So there's going to be, especially if you absolutely need ways to use that to generate that token because you have a lot of cards that require it for payoffs, like this Darth Sidious card. This is talk about heuristics. This is kind of Snoke-like. We can look at this card and like immediately be like, okay, it's the same cost, it's the same color, similar stats. It's a 6/8 instead of a 6/6, so that's better, and has Restore 2. And it has a when played effect that is similar to Snoke's static effect, right? This says you may use the Force, defeat all non-Sith units that have 3 or less remaining health. Snoke, of course, is that static effect that does -2/-2 to everything. So both are used to kind of clear up small units, while Darth Sidious is more like immediate impact. It kills all the units. It doesn't affect anything with more than 3 life the way Snoke does. And Snoke is also a persistent effect. I think Snoke overall is probably like the more solid card, but Darth Sidious in certain board states will be better because he just immediately clears everything instead of just shrinking. So all those units that you shrink with Snoke but don't kill, and then they remove Snoke, they're still there, right? Liberated by Darkness is another interesting Force mechanic card because this is the exact same text as Change of Heart, which is a 6-cost card. This is a 5-cost card in Villainous Cunning. It takes control of an opponent's unit the same way Change of Heart does, but you're getting a 1-cost discount for it because you have to use the Force token. So in this case, we're kind of seeing that the Force token is being valued as about a 1-resource ability. So because, I mean, frankly, this is the exact same card as Change of Heart. It just costs 1 less. So that's an interesting way to think about this Force mechanic, is that, okay, if everything that uses this token is that token is being treated as like a 1-cost bump on these cards, then we can start maybe figuring out the balance on this token, and then we have to figure out if we're actually getting 1 resource worth of value every time we spend this token, because it's very clear on this card, but it might not be clear on all the other ones. And here are a couple other Force. This is Hero. I showed you some villainous. So Jedi Sentinel, for instance. This is a 5/4 for 4. So not amazing stats, not terrible, but it says while the Force is with you, you have Sentinel. This unit has Sentinel, and that's pretty big because right now there's really fringy cards that sometimes see play in this, especially in this like 4-cost Cunning slot. There's Gamorrean Guards, which are 4/4s that have Sentinel if you have another yellow unit. There's the Shadowed Hover Tank, which is a 5/3 Sentinel for 4, and this is better than both of those, right? It's a 5/4, but the Sentinel is conditional on you having the Force. Now, it doesn't spend the Force token, it just will have Sentinel. So there might be a mechanic here, a build around deck that actually doesn't try to use this token very much. It's just using units that get buffed by the token. And in that case, you don't have to spend it. You don't have to have many cards that generate it. Jedi Consular is a card that you use that Force token, you can play a unit from your hand, it costs 2 less. So that's kind of treating that Force token as a 2-cost discount. It's valuing it at 2 cost. Now, this is a 2-cost 1/4. So, you know, you're playing it on turn 1. You're not going to have the Force token on turn 2, which is tricky. But what I would like to look out for with this guy is keep tabs on any cards that might generate a force token on turn 1, especially if it's free, like a base, for instance. If there's a base with an epic action that like just generates the force token, well, then you can play Jedi Consular turn 1 and immediately use it turn 2 and play a 5-drop, which can be pretty strong. Without that synergy, I think this guy will probably end up being too slow, but it'll be really interesting to see if we have ways to kind of generate that token on turn 1. And talk about heuristics. Here's Ezra Bridger, and this is a 3-cost 3/5 in heroism blue with every relevant trait ever: Force, Jedi, Rebel, Spectre, and a powerful on attack that gives an experience token to another creature or Spectre unit. So I don't need to spend that much time on this card to tell you it's good, because I mean, we've played vanilla 3/5s and they've been great at times, and we've seen 3/5s be kind of the golden stat line for turn 2 plays, and this has that. It has it in a color that hasn't had that stat line before, heroism blue. It has incredible traits all over the place. It even has on attack that is great. Like, I don't need to spend too much time on this. It's just good. It might not see play in every blue deck ever. That's going to depend a lot on like what you're trying to accomplish in your deck, but I mean, I'll likely just jam this at first in a ton of blue decks, because 3/5, like, it's just, there's no downside here. It's just really good numbers, really good traits, and an on-attack ability. We don't have to work too hard to identify this one. And we don't have to work too hard to know that this guy's going to be good. And this is a legendary, and I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being like the best legendary in the set. I wish we're going to get more legendaries of this power level, but who knows? It's Qui-Gon Jinn. He finally gets a card. He's going to get a leader 2, and he's a 7-cost Cunning Heroism card. He's a 7/5 Ambusher. And with a powerful when defeated effect, you may choose a non-leader ground unit. Its owner puts it on top or bottom of their deck. So it kind of kills like another card, right? Now, of course, they can put that card back on top of their deck, but that means you've kind of killed their next draw. So it's still like card advantage for you. This guy can one-shot most leaders in the game and survive, right? Because most leaders do not have 5 or more power on them, which is fantastic. He can come in, trade into a giant unit, and then bounce, like not even bounce, just like remove another giant unit. He has weird fringe interactions where you can actually do that effect on your own cards, so you can put one of your own cards back on top of your deck. I don't think that's going to come up too often, but it might happen. Anyway, again, like, you don't have to spend too much time on this. This is fantastic. This is very, very good. Now, Yellow Hero has a lot of really good 7-drops, right? You got the Han Solo unit, you got Enfys. So this, like, fits. Like, you're not going to be able to jam all those cards in a deck, but I wouldn't be surprised if this one usurps those cards in a lot of situations. It's really, really good. I like that this is legendary. I think it's important that you get really good cards like this at legendary. And, yeah, hopefully we get more on this power level. All right, let's get into the leader review now. And the first one is a starter leader. This is Darth Maul. He's a red villainous. He's a 6 deploy 5/6. So I'm already not too happy with that. I think 6 health on 6 deploy leaders is just, it's not where it's at. We need these 6-drop leaders to be more pushed. So few of them see play because their stats are frankly bad almost all the time. Like, there's Anakin who sees play, but that's because he's like a 10/7 when you flip him. There's Cad Bane who sees play because he's kind of like a 4/8, and he also has a really powerful static effect. And then Rey is probably the only leader at 6 cost that like sees relevant play that does not get those stats, but Restore 3 is absurd. So there is something going there. But Darth Maul here, a 5/6. His on-attack ability, deal 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to a different unit. I don't even think that ability is that great. It's just really small pings. His front leader side ability, use the Force token, deal 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to a different unit. It's going to depend. I mean, with all these Force-related actions, it's really going to depend on how easy it is to generate that token. Of course, this not costing resources is pretty good. Like, dealing 1 to 2 things is pretty strong. But I don't know if that's going to be the best thing to do with Force tokens in general. Overall, I think because of this stat line, there's very little to excite me about Darth Maul. It's another Darth Maul leader with only 6 health on a 6 deploy, which is pretty unfortunate. He does have a lightsaber being released in this set. It's also in the starter set. It's a 3 cost that gives +4/+2. And it says, when played, if attached unit is Darth Maul, you may attack with him. For this attack, he gains Overwhelm and can't attack bases. So he just slams into something and overwhelms. Not being able to attack bases is, kind of a weird downside to include on something like this, I think. Where I think this would actually shine the most is not with the Darth Maul leader. It's actually that Darth Maul unit from Twilight that can attack 2 units at once, because then you can actually just like overwhelm through both of them, and you're attacking for 9 into 2 units. You could probably splash absurd amount of damage if you can ever pull that off. I don't think you'll end up pulling it off too often, because that unit, it's a 5 cost that just kind of sits there, but that's probably the best synergy that I can think of for this lightsaber. And here's the other starter leader, and this one's much more interesting. So this is Qui-Gon Jinn, and he's also a 6 deploy, and he flips into a 4/7, which I also think is just like not quite enough stats. I think you need a little more. I would like to see a little more on these 6 costs, but 4/7 is definitely better than 5/6. Now, he has a really interesting ability on both sides. So on his front side, use the Force token. So once again, a lot of this will depend on how easy it is to generate that token, but it says return a friendly non-leader unit to its owner's hand. Play a non-villainous unit that costs less than the return unit from your hand for free. So you bounce one of your own things, and then you can play something from your hand that costs 1 less. And this is, it's tough sometimes to figure out exactly how to build a deck like this, and will it be good enough, especially since the cards have to be cheaper. But there is so much you can do with this by looping when played effects. Think even something simple like playing the Ahsoka unit. They discard a card. You had the Force token from the previous turn. You use it. You return Ahsoka to your hand. You play Bodhi, and you discard another card, right? And now you also just have that Ahsoka in your hand for next turn, right? You try to use this ability with units that generate really strong swings with when played effects, like Cantina Bouncer. I mean, a lot of them are in double yellow, but there's certainly a bunch in other colors as well. Ambush units that they can come in, ambush, survive, and then you bounce them back to your hand for free and play another unit that has a good when played effect. There's some sneaky stuff you can do with this with exploit, for instance. If you can exploit something really, really large into play that is just like a vanilla unit, and then bounce that vanilla unit and cheat out some absurd bomb into play that you others wouldn't have been able to play that early. So this one is going to take a lot to kind of figure out, because it is the kind of ability that can be completely broken and create like a really crazy combo deck or a really crazy like tempo style deck. We'll need to spend a lot of time. And on his leader side, it's the same effect. You just have to complete an attack, and you don't need to use that Force token anymore. So when he's a leader and that flip turn, you could potentially do this effect twice, which can be really, really powerful. I like this leader. I think it'll be really fun. Where his shortcoming is, of course, is that he's a 6 cost deploy with just pretty generic stats. 4/7. It's not an impressive stat line at 6 cost, unfortunately, but the ability is quite impressive. And he comes paired with this Ether Sprite. It's Qui-Gon Jinn's Ether Sprite. It's a 3/6 for 5 in yellow heroism that says, on attack, the next time you use a when played ability this phase, you may use that ability again. And that is a very powerful effect. Now, this is a 5 cost 3/6 that does nothing when you play it. You have to attack with it. It does require a lot of setup. Now, like Han can play this a turn early, and wow, imagine DJ still existed with this card. You steal 2 resources. Well, there's still a lot of really crazy things you can do with this, especially if you can get this out a turn early, because you attack, you play something like Ahsoka, they discard 2 cards. You play something like Kira, you can name 2 different cards in their hand. Play something like Bodhi, you hit 2 cards, right? There's a lot of really good things that you can do. Oh, Cantina Bouncer. I mean, I keep renaming all the same cards that I named with Qui-Gon, but this can be really crazy if you can pull it off. We don't know if like the best home for this will be with Qui-Gon. It might be with something like Han, who can cheat this out. And it is a really sturdy unit to cheat out. It's a 3/6. If you play that on turn 3, there's not a lot that can remove it before you get to attack with it. So the next leader we got here is Third Sister, and this is definitely an interesting one. Now, it's a 5 flip leader. It does have unfortunate health stat. It's a 5-4. Now 5's pretty chunky attack for a 5 flip, but 4 health leaves a lot to be desired. Now she does flip hidden, so can't be attacked the turn you flip this leader, which does definitely insulate it from getting one shot by a lot of things, namely units in play. Now there are a bunch of events that can take her out immediately, things that don't cost a lot, like open fire, of course, and force choke, and whatever it may be. It definitely is a little precarious. I wish the stats were a little better, but hidden definitely gives you usually a way to get maybe an attack off, or maybe a way to suit up this leader with a lightsaber or something and get that health threshold up. It gives you breathing room, ways to sequence turns, right? So that you don't just flip into a one shot. And that's good. I don't think you need to be concerned necessarily that this is going to get one shot every game you flip it. The ability, though, is the really exciting part. And on the leader side, it says play a unit from your hand. It gains hidden for this phase. So it doesn't cost any resources, and you just play a unit, any unit, and it is hiding for that turn. And it's the same, well, very similar on her unit side. It's an on attack trigger. So theoretically on her flip turn, you can get 2 hidden units out. Now hidden, it's going to be a little tough to evaluate exactly how good this is. I think hidden's value is going to be much better when you're able to hold initiative going into the next turn and actually use that unit, right? But I think it's incredibly valuable with high impact units that don't have things like when played effects. This is going to be especially good with like maybe like 5 cost units. Like, you know, I've notoriously said like 4, 5, 6 cost units in this game are all pretty bad for the most part. Like there's very few that are actually any good in this game, because unless they do something when they come into play immediately, they just kind of sit there and they die before you get to do anything with them, or they're just too slow. Now with Third Sister, it's going to make them dying a much more difficult task for your opponent, and you might just be able to get an attack off with them, something that you often wouldn't be able to do with them otherwise. It's also a great way to like present difficult threats for your opponent, especially late in the game, right? When you talk about putting your opponents in like check situations, like they're low on life and you play a unit that is presenting lethal and they have to like immediately kill it, or they have to like claim so that they can kill it first action next turn. Well, with hidden, you present a lethal threat that's hidden, and if they don't have a way to kill it from their hand with like an event, wow, that's just like scary, right? Because they suppose they even have like complete board dominance, but they can't use any of their units to actually attack your hidden unit. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't even like push damage to your base, because every time you play like a 3/3 that's hidden, I have to claim because I'm at 3 life. I can't interact with it, right? So it's gonna create like these kind of check situations late in the game. It's gonna create maybe higher value on units that we notoriously haven't liked playing very much, like chunky 4, 5, 6 cost units that require an on attack to get a lot of value, and it's going to enable that a little more. It's also a force traded leader, which is cool. There's Inquisitor trait, which is getting a little bit of synergy here as well, and Imperial trait has some synergy built in. The weakest part of this leader, of course, is the force stats. It is very weak for a 5 flip. This is IG's stats, 5/4, and we don't really like that. But the build around aspect of this ability is pretty cool. And we got like one synergy card for an Inquisitor to show here. It's Scythe. It's a 3/5 for 4. It's a space unit. It says on attack, you may give another friendly Inquisitor unit +2/+0 for this phase. So, you know, it's kind of attacking as 5 damage. That damage is spread onto another unit. But, you know, you play that leader, you play Scythe hidden, and then maybe you're able to like first action attack with this, buff her. It's kind of fairy tale land, because at that point she's probably getting one shot before she's ever getting to attack. But there is some synergy here. We'll see maybe potentially more Inquisitor synergy. This, of course, also only has 3 power, so it can work with Grand Inquisitor. There's a card that I'm not actually showing off right now. That's a space unit that might also work with Grand Inquisitor. It's like a unit that has gets +3 power if it has damage on it, and it also has 3 power, so it's an interesting Grand Inquisitor call out. But Scythe would work with him as well. All right, next leader, we got a new Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is a command heroism. It's also a 5-flip leader. It flips as a 3-6, so stats are solid, right? It's not the 3-7, but honestly, we only have Quinlan now. The other one was banned. It's Django, so I think this is a much more reasonable stat line for 5-flip leaders, maybe 4-6 at the top end, but I think that's 7th health. I don't know how often we're going to see aggressive leaders with 7 health anymore, but this Obi-Wan leader also has Force Jedi traits, which are valuable, and another Force token ability. This says use the Force on the leader side, and then give an experience token to a unit without an experience token on it. So, you know, this ability exists on a few units, right? Like leaders like Tarkin, for instance, or Rey, and it usually costs 1 resource. And here it's free, but you have to use the Force token, and that Force token is sort of being valued as a 1 resource ability. It'll come down to how efficiently we can create that token, but it's a pretty powerful ability. And on his leader side, it's just the same ability it doesn't require using the Force token. Now, he can't give the experience to himself, so he can't attack as a 4/7, but you do just get to throw experience around. And I think his unit side ability is pretty strong. I mean, it's very similar to Rey's, but he comes down a turn earlier, and he has better stats than she does when he flips. Of course, you can't stack the experience onto 1 unit. You need to spread it around, but I think it's a solid ability. The stats are fine. Like 3-6 is not an exciting stat line for 5. It's just kind of the base stat line that usually maybe not usually, but that I think we're seeing a decent amount of 5-cost leaders have like this 3-6 or 4-6 stat line. And yeah, I don't know how effectively we're going to be able to create this Force token loop, but if you're able to start generating a Force token every turn and you get a free experience every turn, things can get pretty crazy. And we are given an Obi-Wan unit version, and similar to Ezra, this is another one that you can use heuristics and just be like, yep, it's good because it's a 3/5 for 3 in command heroism. So even without any text on this card, it's pretty good, but there's very good text on this card. First of all, traits, Force Jedi Republic. Second of all, when you play a Force unit, including it gains Sentinel. So this guy just comes into play as a Sentinel. He's a 3/5 Sentinel when you play it. And then basically every turn, otherwise, you can give it Sentinel if you play a Force unit. And imagine you had the Force token in play, like you get one on turn 2, you play Obi-Wan as a 3/5 Sentinel. The leader can immediately turn this into a 4/6 with that Force token, and 4/6 stat line on turn 2 would be really, really powerful. Dodges a lot of removal. Yeah, so like this guy is naturally just a really good card. All right, and the last leader for this review is Darth Revan, and you see a gold bar on this card. That's to denote that it's a non-canon character. Just a little tidbit, but this is a villainous aspectless leader. It's the first aspectless leader we had, so you are forced into a monocolored deck that can't play the double aspect, right? You're not playing a double aspect leader. It's just you get 1 color. And there is precedent sort of for this because there's a leader right now that gets played a decent amount. It's Cad Bane, and he gets played with Tarkin Town very often. And there's a lot of versions of that deck that play like between 0 and 3 red cards in the deck. So they are already kind of playing a single aspect leader without double aspect cards. So I wouldn't just write this off just because you're losing an aspect completely. We're going to have 5 sets. In the future, we'll have 6, 7 sets. There might just be enough in one aspect to make this work. But let's check out what he does. He's a 3/6 for 5 with 4 Sith traits. I'll already say I kind of wish that this maybe had been the one that they decide to give 7 health because you are paying a pretty big price losing an aspect. And I would have maybe liked to see the stat line kind of get pumped a little bit to justify that, but he does come with Restore 1, which is not irrelevant, and he has a leader side ability that says when a friendly unit attacks and defeats a unit, you may exhaust this leader if you do give an experience token to that friendly unit. Really important, this doesn't even cost an action, it's just a reaction to any time a friendly unit defeats a unit. So suppose you ambush something and it survives, you can immediately give that ambush unit an experience without needing to spend an action to do it. It's going to make maintaining initiative easier. It's going to make your opponent maybe not be able to get a value trade back on a unit that just killed something, right? Because suppose you kill something, but you only had 1 life left, and then their opponent can like value trade it with something. Well, here you're just getting that experience immediately. And on his unit side, it's the same thing. It says when a friendly unit attacks and defeats a unit, and that will include himself. And it's also just not capped anymore. So this could trigger multiple times in one turn once a unit. And that can really go off. And this is a strong ability. I'm not seeing anything specific to this ability and this stat line that like suggests that it was like too good if this leader had a color though. Now we're going to see if there's maybe more payoffs for specifically running like an aspectless leader, or maybe some cards that benefit from that. But it does look like this guy was punished pretty heavily by losing a color. And in like maybe this ability is a little above rate. It might actually be, because like giving an experience token as a reaction is maybe valued as like something that maybe in a lot of cases would have cost a resource to do. And here you're kind of getting spotted it for free. So I'm not writing this guy off. I think this is a very interesting ability. I think it's going to be interesting to try to build a whole deck around like this single aspect penalty, and we'll hopefully get some payoffs. And there are a couple that were released already. So we have Darth Malik, and this is another legendary. It's also just in villainous, and he's a 4/7 Force Sith that costs 5, and he has Overwhelm. And he says when played, if you control a Sith leader unit, you may ready this unit. So he'll come into play ready if Darth Revan is in play, right? Now, this isn't quite like Boba Fett's Fire Spray synergy level, where like that would just come in ready if your leader was Boba Fett. Like here, your leader needs to be a Sith and it needs to be deployed. It can't just be your leader. And there are other, like Asajj Ventress is a Sith leader that costs 4, so she potentially could like curve into this. Most of the other Sith leaders are pretty expensive, so right now the main synergy looks to be with Darth Revan. But flipping Darth Revan and then playing Darth Malik, and Malik would come in as a 4/7 overall ready unit. It's a pretty big get. Now you could also ambush with this guy, and he would immediately kill something and then ready up. And if like Darth Revan is in play, he would kill something, get an experience, and ready up, right? This is a when played effect, so you can stack an ambush on this and then get that when played ready effect. So that's pretty strong, and like the stats are good. It's of course only ever going to be good if it's coming into play ready. Otherwise, it's mostly a 5-cost do nothing. So you really need to be pairing this with a Sith leader that ideally flips on the turn that this is getting played, and that looks like Revan. And then we also have Darth Revan's lightsabers, which is a 2-cost that gives +2/+2, and then if the attached unit is a Sith, it gains grit. Now we have a lot of cards of this variety, 2-cost that give +2/+2 worth of stats. The payoff here is grit. I don't love that as a payoff, although with a high health Sith leader, I mean even Darth Revan, 6 health, if the idea here is to just like get this on Darth Revan starts killing things, Darth Revan starts growing from experience and then also growing from the grit, and like it stays around, and it can get kind of enormous pretty quickly. The card's decent, it's cheap, it's nice to have like cheap upgrades for your leaders because you're able to like churn actions. So decent card. And Darth Tyrannus is a pretty cool starter card. It's a 4-cost 4/3 shielded, and it has when the Force is with you, this unit gains ambush. And again, I don't know how easy it's going to be to have the Force all the time, but when this has ambush, it's quite good. I mean, a 4/3 ambush shielded is above rate. Now, 4 power ambush 4-drops exist in this game, and for the most part, they don't see play outside of 4-LOM, and 4-LOM specifically sees play in Cad Bane because it kind of pseudo ambushes for 5 with Cad Bane's ability. Darth Tyrannus, the question will be like, how much is it killing? And we're seeing so many good 3/5s in this game, and we just got a couple more in Ezra and Obi-Wan getting released. So how often is this 4 ambush going to kill something? will be the question. And of course, ambush with shielded can be really good. So if this ambushes into a 2-power unit, you can actually stack the ambush first and then get the shield afterwards. So you get left over with like a 4-1 shielded. With Darth Malik, can be really crazy to like ambush into something and then gain an experience and just have this guy stick around. He's got good traits. Force Separatist Sith. Separatist is interesting because with the Dooku leader, this guy can actually cost 2. I don't know how often you're going to have Force in a deck like that, but it's possible. And this guy is solid. Like, if the Force is consistent and you're able to like have this ambush online a lot, and it doesn't even use the token, it just says while the Force is with you, it gains ambush, he can be pretty strong. All right, so we're done with the leaders, and I'm going to go through some card call-outs. This is HK47. It is another legendary. It's a 2/4 villainous aggression card. It's a Sith droid, and droid is interesting on a 2-cost because of Invisible Hand. There aren't a lot of 2-cost droids for that ship to pull out of your deck, but here is one. And it says when an enemy unit is defeated, deal 1 damage to its controller's base. So 2/4 stat line is not like a supremely amazing stat line. Like, it's sturdy, but 2 power often is not cutting it a lot of the time, like especially when you're trying to be aggressive. And this is sort of trying to be aggressive, but at the same time, it's the idea here is that you're actually kind of a mid-range deck removing units, and you're getting extra value from removing your opponent's units. You get chip damage on their base, and I think this guy is solid. Like, it's a solid unit to have stick around and get some decent value. We're gonna have to look for synergies like Sith and Droid. I mean, Droid, I know the synergy with Invisible Hand. Sith looks to have a few callouts, and I think there is potential for a card like this. Legendary is an interesting rarity choice for this guy, but it's a cool card. And here we've got another legendary. This is a heroic only one. It's a 3-cost, and it's Grogu. So we've got another Grogu unit. It's a 1/6 force. It's got hidden, so tons of health, and you can't attack it the turn it comes into play. And it has an action to exhaust, heal up to 2 damage from a unit. If you do, deal that much damage to a unit. So it's a pretty high upside ability. If you're able to get damage on your own units, for instance, like in a young Han deck where you're playing units, you can even play Grogu on turn 1 with 2 damage on itself, and then next turn you can immediately heal that 2 and deal 2. If there's other units that come into play with damage, if you're able to like force some board interaction, there is a decent amount of upside. It is, however, a very slow ability. It's a very telegraphed ability, and the unit itself is almost a complete blank, right? Because it's a 1/6. It's not really engaging in any meaningful combat. So how many times in a game do you need to be able to get this ability to actually trigger and get value from it before this unit is worth it, right? I don't think getting this ability to activate 1 time is enough to justify its 3-cost 1/6 stat line. So you probably need a couple activations, and it can be pretty clunky. I do see the upside here on this unit. Of course, it has the force trait as well, as do a ton of units in this set, frankly, and I think every leader. But overall, I actually am not that high on this card. I think in practical senses, it'll actually end up being a bit clunky and not super impactful. And here we've got a 3/3 aggression heroism unit. It's Jedi Knight. It's got Force Jedi traits, and it says when played, if you have initiative, deal 2 damage to an enemy ground unit. So it's a lot of upside on this ability. It's not always going to trigger. When it doesn't trigger, this unit's not good. But, you know, think of Death Trooper, for instance, in villainy. It's a pretty good card. It doesn't always do the thing, but it sometimes does. And of course, there's way more upside on Jedi Knight in the sense that you're always left over with a 3/3 unit when this triggers, and Death Trooper often needs to deal 2 damage to itself, and you get a 3/1. So you're trading the reliability of something like Death Trooper with the consistency, with the inconsistency here, but you get more upside here with this unit. Of course, you also get the Force trait. I think this one is sneaky good, actually. It can be really good in like a Quinlan deck, for instance, where you get the 2 damage and you get the ping from Quinlan. So you might be able to just like deal 3 to something or deal 2 to one thing and 1 to another. It's a cool card. It's a common, and I think it's a pretty high power leveled common. Here we got a pair of troopers that I'm going to talk about together. They're both aggression command, villainy command. And I really do hope that we're going to finally maybe get a villainy, just like regular traditional aggro deck. There's been pieces, but essentially villainy aggro has kind of fallen flat. There's been like Kylo, just like glass cannon, swarm aggro, and it's never been like pure meta. And of course, there have been like aggressive slanted villainy decks, mainly like Boba and Jango. They've been entirely dependent on like the pushed nature of their leaders and not so much like the aggro nature of the cards that exist in villainy. But, you know, we're going to see trooper aggro kind of synergy stuff here. It's existed in other stuff, like General Tag exists. There's a lot of troopers in this game in general. But here we've got a 2/2 that will be a 4/2 if you just control another villainy unit. And a 4/2 for 2 is pretty beefy. And Captain Enoch, the true payoff here, which is a 3-cost 1/5, but it says it gets +1/+0 for each trooper in your discard pile. So that doesn't look to me like it's going to be a good turn 2 play. Like it's usually not going to be a 3/5, which is what we're looking for on our turn 2 plays at this point. But this could be like a 5/5 for 3 at some points in the game, and that's enormous. This comes out of Vader, for instance, and I think like a Vader top end into like a command go wide trooper strategy could be a pretty cool archetype if it gets enough support. So wanted to talk about these two together. I'm interested to see if like trooper aggro can get pushed enough. And here we got another pair of cards I'm going to talk about together. It's Owen Larns and Watto. They are both tiny attack units that potentially synergize with something like Rey. Owen Lars is kind of a replacement for Moisture Farmer. It's a 0/3 with Restore 2 instead of a 0/4. Has some upside on its when defeated, right? You get to search the top 5 for a Force unit and draw it. Top 5 is not very deep. I will say that. Now, if your whole deck is Force units, you're almost always going to hit. Right now, that's kind of tough to do, but maybe in this set, it won't be. I don't think Owen Larns is incredible. Like that, if you're always drawing with this, it's decent. It's still like usually not going to give you upfront card value on his own because he's a 0/3. So like, sure, he replaces himself when he dies, but if you're not generating a card's worth of advantage from him in the first place, then what's the point? But Rey can certainly do some interesting stuff with 0/3s that cost 1, right? He's a 1/4 turn 1 in that deck. And Watto is a 1/6 for 3 that has a cool on attack. Now, I don't love that your opponent gets to choose, but your opponent's either going to give you an experience, at which point you might throw it on Watto and he becomes like a 2/7, or they give you a draw engine. Both effects are obviously good if you get an on attack trigger with Watto, and you usually will. It's a 1/6. It's not really dying, and it can accrue a ton of value over time. So it's certainly going to be a decent card if you're able to attack with this multiple times. And in Rey, again, it can get pumped even further by her ability. So cool cards. They're both fringe, and there's not a ton of fringe interactions in the game, but there is some, and we'll see if we get some more. All right, here we've got a resource cheating cost, and once again, it's in Cunning. This is a 1-cost Cunning villainy card, as I have foreseen. So look at the top card of your deck. You may use the Force. If you do, play that card. It costs 4 less. So this is cheating 3 resources, right? Because it costs 1. It's reducing the cost by 4 now. There's not a ton of ways to like game this right now. There are ways to see the top card of your deck, notably in like a Thrawn from set 1. You will always know what's on top of your deck. There aren't really ways to manipulate the top card of your deck in the sense that you can't really put cards from your hand on top of your deck. That is something that has been reserved entirely to the Yoda leader in Heroism, which wouldn't really play this card, but that leader is essentially what enabled You're My Only Hope as a potential playable card. That card was basically unplayable until Yoda came out. And until I see a way to manipulate the top card of your deck reliably, and that doesn't mean look at the top card of your deck, it doesn't mean look at the top 2 and like put 1 back on top. It means a way to truly manipulate it with cards from your hand. Then I won't be very high on this. Now, the resource cheat is incredibly large, but you do need to Force token, and once again, that's being valued at about 1 resource. So this is kind of like a 2 cheat in that sense, if you're counting that force token as 1 extra resource. And if I'm going to have to rely on like Thrawn's ability to just know what's on top, and I have no ways to actually game this in even further, then this really feels a little too YOLO for me. But there is a ton of potential and a ton of brokenness kind of inherent with this amount of resource cheating. So it's something to keep an eye on. Next, we've got Marin. This is a 3-cost 2/5 with Force and Night traits. And Force trait on a 5 health turn 2 play is pretty nice, especially in red. We got a really clean way to enable Force throw with this and potentially other Force synergies. The on attack says you may discard a card from your hand if you do deal 2 damage to a unit. It'd be cool if we see even more synergies with discard. Right now, there's not a ton of ways to get tons of value from that. There's like Migs Mayfield, there's Palp's Return to buy back cards from your discard pile. Of course, Kylo likes when its hand is small, although I don't think Kylo is really in the market for a 2/5 turn 2 play. But if we see more ways to really benefit from getting cards into our own discard pile, this has a ton of value, because then it kind of attacks as a 4-power unit, and you might be able to kill something and then maybe get value from that discard elsewhere. But always keep tabs on like high health early Force units, because this curves nicely into the Forces with me. It of course enables that Force throw, so it's an interesting card. And next, another Force unit. I mean, we're getting so many of them, but this is Luke Skywalker. It's a heroism only. It costs 4. It's a 3/5 Force fringe. It says when you play another unique unit, you may use the Force. If you do, give Luke an experience and a shield. All right, so 2 restrictions, right? You have to play a unique unit and you have to use the Force. If you do, though, he gets buffed pretty hard. Like, he gets an experience and a shield. That's pretty big. Now, my issue here is that you are giving a lot up front to play this, because it is a 4-cost 3/5 that does absolutely nothing. And that is a steep cost. 3/5 for 4 has usually been attached to like a very significant ability, something like Kira or Ahsoka. Those have been playable 3/5s for 4, but they come with tremendously powerful when played effects. This does not. This, you need to get, you need to do something the next turn, and that something isn't even guaranteed, because you need the Force token and you need a unique unit. Overall, I don't think this guy is great. Like, there is a lot of upside if you're very consistently getting the Force token. If that part is trivial and maybe your whole deck is unique cards, then it's still just a maybe for me, because you're still just paying 4 for a 3/5 do nothing, and that is not always great. And the last card I'm going to talk about today is Porg. It's a 0-cost 1/1 neutral card, and you know, when it's free, you gotta pay attention. Now, most likely this won't be good, but if it's good, it's going to be crazy good, because 0 cost, right? If we're looking at ways to kind of abuse just going wide, abuse mechanics, for instance, now there are 2 of them, right? You can do that off of a 0-cost creature here. There's some potential to that. There's potential to buffs here. There's way, if like units entering plays triggers something, then you got a 0-cost way to trigger it. It's just free, so I wanted to mention it. There's like not a ton that I think right now is like broken with this, but we'll pay attention, because yeah, like just having free access to units is something we haven't had yet. All right, that's what I got. Let me know about what you think of these cards, of these leaders. If there's any cards you wanted to shout out that I didn't cover, feel free to as well. And until next time, take care.